In other words, what you are saying is that wishes, emotions, feelings, decisions, thoughts are all things which take place in physical objects, namely people. Yes. And, of course, in a sense, that's an obvious fact. And what you're saying is that not only are these always accompanied by micro-physical changes, changes in our brains and our central nervous systems and so on, but they indeed are those micro-physical changes.
Exactly.
Now, before I go on to raise with you some of the apparent difficulties inherent in that view, I wonder if you can explain how it is that almost all of mankind, as I said only a few minutes ago, has disagreed with you about this. Why people in general take a dualist view of reality. Now, I mean, let me add this point. I mean, if I put that question to almost anyone else, he could say, well, it's obvious why people think like that. They think like that because dualism corresponds to directly experienced reality. That is how we experience things. But you can't say that because you don't think it is how we experience things. So what would your answer be?
I recognize certainly a profound difference between so-called mental events and externally observable physical ones, in spite of construing these mental events as themselves event states activity on the part of a physical object. The reason, and as for the traditional dualistic attitude, certainly this goes back to primitive times. I think one cause of it, partial explanation, may be the experience of dreams and the seeming separation of the mind from the body. In that state, certainly animism antedated science. Thales, the first of the Greek philosophers, is said to have said that all things are full of gods. Primitive peoples today are said to be animists very largely, and to believe that what we call inanimate objects are animated by spirits. One can even imagine traces of animism in the basic concepts of our science itself. The notion of cause, I suspect, began with the feeling of effort, of pushing on the part of the individual, a subjective feeling, as a mental entity. And force surely had that sort of origin. But as time has gone on and as science has progressed in recent centuries, the dissociation of these concepts from their original mental context seems to have been conducive to great scientific progress. And I think of physicalism as a departure, a product of latter-day science, which of course is a phenomenon that's very uncharacteristic of the history of mankind.
But I don't think that the chief reason why most people take a dualist view of reality is to do with dreams or the other things that you've mentioned. I think it's chiefly because we all do have, it seems to me, direct experience of an internal flow of thoughts and emotions and responses and desires and fantasies and memories and so on, which is going on all the time that we're awake, and which is extremely complex, not only in the sense that it may be about complicated things, but also in the sense that there may be several different things going on at once. And I think we're all directly aware of something like this going on inside ourselves, and this doesn't manifest itself in any way in observable external behavior.
We are aware of these things, and I'm not denying their existence, but I'm construing them or reconstruing them as activities on the part of physical objects, namely on our part. And the fact that these are not observable on the whole from the outside doesn't distinguish them from much that the physicist assumes in the way of internal microscopic or submicroscopic structure of inanimate objects. A great deal goes on that we don't observe from the outside, and that we have to account for conjecturally. The important reason for construing all this activity as activity on the part of bodies is to preserve the closed character of the system of the physical world.
Does this mean that you deny the real existence of the age-old problem about whether or not we have free will?
It doesn't mean that, but because the will would retain its status, even though becoming ultimately a neural phenomenon and an aspect of the activity of a physical object. However, I think the problem of the freedom of the will is an outcome of a confusion. There's no question in my mind about the freedom of the will. The will is free in the sense that people very often do what they will to do. They are free to within limits of constraint and to within limits of their strength or talent to do things that they will to do. Freedom of the will does not mean that the will is free to will as it will. That would be nonsense. And it doesn't mean that the will is uncaused. The will is caused. And we all are prepared to recognize that the will is caused when we try to train children in such a way as to influence their behavior or enact laws to discourage criminals, or we try to get votes. People try to sell things. All these are cases of causing people to will, but the freedom of their will remains insofar as their activity is the result of a causal chain, one link of which is the willing. And that willing can be itself caused. It is.
Given that you hold these views, how do you see the traditional body-mind problem? I mean, let me just remind viewers of what that is. I mean, I've said earlier that most people seem to take a dualist view of reality, the view that everything in the universe consists ultimately of either minds or bodies, that there are both kinds of entity. And that has given rise to a traditional problem, which no one has ever come up with a thoroughly satisfactory solution to, and that is the question, how are these incorporeal, abstract, non-material minds able to actually move and push about the material bodies? Now, it's clear that since you don't believe in the existence of minds as independently of bodies, the problem does not present itself to you in that form. Do you, given your views, do you simply bypass the mind-body problem totally?
No. As you say, the body-mind problem doesn't exist in that form for me. There's no longer that problem of interaction, and in fact, it's in order to eliminate the problem in that form that I opt for physicalism. However, the problem then arises, how are we to talk about all these ordinarily so-called mental events and mental activity, this flux of experience, if we're not recognizing minds, not recognizing mental entities? It's no good trying to paraphrase all this into neurological terms, because it would take too much in the way of detailed understanding of the mechanism of the nervous system. Now, there's a as a first step, a quick, easy solution to that. One may simply keep the mentalistic terminology, but regard all these terms as terms applicable to bodies and to the activity of bodies. This is easy. This is too easy in a way, because there's another point about in favor of the physicalistic attitude, which I haven't touched on up to now, namely the advantage of intersubjectivity, objectivity. The data are not introspective data. The data are shared, or can be shared, by other observers. It's because of this in large part at least, that the natural sciences have been so successful. Now, and introspective psychology has not been comparably successful. Well, now, if we simply take over all the conceptual apparatus of introspective psychology and mentalism, and simply try to excuse it by saying all these attributes or activities of bodies, we're no longer getting the benefit of the intersubjectivity of natural science.